Suffering does not come from what happens, but from your resistance to it. If you want to break the cycle of emotional pain, the first thing you need to understand is a brutal truth. Suffering is not caused by what happens to you, but by your resistance to what is. Most people spend their entire lives without understanding this, staying trapped in a perpetual state of suffering without realizing that they are the ones perpetuating it. Carl Jung explained this with one of his most powerful phrases: "What you resist persists." This is not just a pretty phrase. It is a psychological and spiritual principle that can completely transform your life. Think about this. When something bad happens, you experience a natural reaction. It could be sadness, anger, disappointment, or any other emotion. But suffering doesn't come from the event itself, but from the inner struggle against reality. It is the mind saying, "This shouldn't be happening. I can't live with this. This is not fair." This rejection is what turns pain into endless torture. The true origin of suffering lies in the human mind, which is designed to seek control. We want things to go the way we expect. We want to avoid pain at all costs. We want the world to operate according to our rules. But life doesn't work under our terms. When an event challenges our expectations, the first thing we do is resist. We refuse to accept reality as it is. And here is where suffering originates, in the fight against the inevitable. Think about it. If a relationship ends, the natural pain may last for days, weeks, or even months. But the suffering that follows for years comes from the refusal to let go, from reliving the memories again and again, from holding on to the idea that this shouldn't have happened. The same happens with any loss, betrayal, or failure. It's not the event that destroys you, but your constant struggle against what is already a fact. How can we break this destructive cycle? This is where the spiritual principle that can change everything comes in: radical acceptance. And pay attention, because accepting is not the same as resigning. It doesn't mean you like what happened or approve of it. It means you decide to let go of the resistance. Instead of wearing yourself out in an endless fight against reality, you choose to channel your energy into what you can control, your response. When you truly accept, something incredible happens. The weight of suffering begins to diminish, not because the pain disappears immediately, but because you no longer feed it with your resistance. Think of someone who was fired from their job. If they cling to anger, the feeling of injustice, and the idea that it was unfair, they can stay trapped in pain for years, blaming the world and feeling like a victim. But if instead, they accept the reality and ask themselves, "What can I do with this?" they take control of their life and transform pain into growth. The key lies in your perception. Jung talked about the importance of integrating everything we experience, even the negative, because pain, when accepted rather than resisted, becomes wisdom. A big mistake we make is believing that our suffering is unique, that no one else has gone through what we are experiencing. But the truth is, pain is part of the human experience. Everyone feels it at some point. What differentiates those who move forward from those who get stuck is their relationship with that pain. Those who resist pain suffer. Those who accept it grow. If you truly want to heal, the first step is to stop waging war against life. Accept what happened, accept what you cannot change, and focus on what you can transform. What no one tells you about freeing yourself from suffering is that when you apply this principle in your life, you realize something incredible. Most of the things that made you suffer did not come from the event itself, but from how you held on to the pain. A relationship ended, and it hurt for years. It wasn't just the breakup, it was your refusal to let go. Someone betrayed you, and you couldn't get over it. It wasn't just the betrayal, It was your attachment to the resentment. You lost an opportunity and couldn't move forward. It wasn't just the lost opportunity. It was your obsession with what could have been. When you let go of resistance, when you stop fighting with reality, the suffering crumbles. It doesn't mean the pain disappears immediately, but you stop feeding it, and over time, it turns into a lesson instead of a burden. What comes next? How the unconscious mind perpetuates suffering. Now here comes something even deeper. In the next point, we will talk about how your unconscious is programmed to repeat the same patterns of suffering over and over again without you realizing it. Because once you understand that suffering comes from resistance, the next step is to discover why, despite knowing this, you keep repeating the same pains over and over. And when you discover the answer to that, you will realize that you have much more power over your life than you ever imagined. So keep watching, because in the next point, we will reveal how your mind is conditioned to hold on to suffering and what to do to break that pattern once and for all. Your unconscious is programmed to make you suffer over and over again. If you think suffering is something that simply happens to you, it's time to wake up to a truth that no one tells you. You are repeating it without realizing it, and not because you want to suffer, but because your unconscious is programmed to keep you trapped in the same pain again and again. Carl Jung explained this brutally. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What this means is that the pain you continue to experience is not a coincidence. It's not because life hates you. It's not because the universe is against you. It's C. Because inside you, there are emotional and mental patterns that you keep repeating automatically. The invisible trap of the unconscious. Your unconscious mind is like software that was installed in you since you were a child. And if you grew up in an environment where you learned that love equals suffering, that abandonment is inevitable, or that the world is a cruel place, then those beliefs got ingrained in your system. What no one tells you is that your unconscious doesn't seek to make you happy. It seeks what is familiar to it. That's why, even though consciously you want to get out of suffering, a part of you keeps attracting the same experiences. You realize that you always end up in relationships that hurt you. You notice that every time something good comes into your life, somehow you ruin it or lose it. You feel like you always end up in the same kind of problems, even though you swear this time it will be different. It's not a coincidence. It's your unconscious repeating what it knows. Emotional self-sabotage. Why do you keep choosing what destroys you? If, as a child, you learned that love came with abandonment, then today, without realizing it, you will feel attracted to people who make you feel the same way. Not because you want to suffer, but because your mind is seeking to confirm what it has always known. If in your childhood you experienced rejection or humiliation, it's possible that today you avoid opportunities for fear of being rejected again. You prefer to stay in what is safe, even if that means staying in pain. And here's the worst part. As long as you don't become conscious of this pattern, you will repeat it all your life, thinking it's destiny. People say, I always meet the same kind of people. I always end up in the same place. Life always gives me the same thing. But it's not life. It's you, repeating the pattern that lives inside you. How to break the unconscious suffering pattern? Now here comes the key. You cannot change what you don't see. If you really want to break the cycle of emotional pain, the first thing you need to do is identify the pattern you've been repeating. Ask yourself these questions. What has been the most frequent emotion in my life? Rejection, abandonment, betrayal, frustration, fear? What types of relationships or situations do I always end up in? What story am I telling myself about me and the world that keeps me in suffering? When you discover the answer to these questions, you realize something brutal. The suffering you've been living is not something that comes from the outside. It's something you carry inside and project over and over again in your life. The moment everything changes. Breaking the cycle of emotional pain doesn't mean you'll never feel sadness or frustration again. It means you will no longer be a prisoner of a pattern that repeats without you noticing. Because the moment you become aware of your unconscious programming, you stop being its slave. You can't avoid feeling pain in life, but you can avoid perpetuating it. You can choose consciously instead of acting on autopilot. Now, in the next point, we will delve into how the ego plays a key role in keeping you trapped in suffering and what you need to do to disarm it before it continues sabotaging your life. Because once you understand the role of the ego in all this, that's when you truly begin to regain control. The ego feeds on your suffering and keeps it alive. If you really want to break the cycle of emotional pain, there's something you need to understand. Your ego is the biggest obstacle in your path to healing. The ego is that inner voice that tells you that you're right to feel hurt, that the world is unfair to you, that others must change for you to heal. But here's the brutal truth. The ego doesn't want you to heal because without your suffering, it ceases to exist. Carl Jung said, "The mind that creates the problem is not the same as the one that can solve it. And the problem is that the ego is precisely the mind that has created all your suffering. If you try to heal from the ego, all you'll do is reinforce the same pain you're trying to escape." How the ego sabotages your emotional healing. The ego is clever. It doesn't directly tell you it wants you to keep suffering. Instead, it convinces you that you have valid reasons to stay that way. It makes you cling to the past, repeatedly telling you what was done to you, how you were betrayed, how life was unfair to you. It makes you believe that thinking about this constantly will give you some kind of power, but in reality, it only keeps you trapped in the same pain. It makes you identify with your suffering. Without realizing it, you begin to define yourself by your pain. You say things like, "I'm the one who is always betrayed. I'm always left. This always happens to me." And by doing so, you reinforce that identity in your mind. It makes you believe the problem is outside of you. The ego tells you that the problem is the other person, that life owes you something, that circumstances must change before you can feel good. But this is the perfect trap. You're always waiting for something external instead of assuming your own power. The ego feeds on conflict, comparison, and wounds that don't heal, because it keeps scratching the scabs until they bleed again. The trap of victimhood. How the ego keeps you weak. One of the subtlest ways the ego sabotages you is through victimhood. When you're trapped in victimhood, you think that everything bad that happens to you is the fault of others, or destiny. And although it may seem like you're protecting yourself, the truth is that all you're doing is giving up your personal power. Because if you believe you have no control over your life, then you'll never do anything to change it. And that's exactly what the ego wants, to keep you small, defenseless, trapped in suffering. But here comes the hardest truth. No one is going to rescue you. No matter how much you suffer, no matter how much you complain, or how much you blame others, the only person who can break the cycle is you. How to dismantle the ego and regain control of your life. The first step in disarming the ego is recognizing that it is not you. You are not your suffering. You are not your past. You are not that inner voice that tells you that you will always be a victim. The ego wants you to cling to your pain because that is what keeps it alive. But the moment you stop feeding it, it weakens and loses power over you. Here are 3 ways to start breaking the ego's control. Observe the voice in your head. When the ego starts reminding you of your wounds or making you feel that life is unfair, observe it. Don't identify with that voice. Just watch it and realize that it is not you. It's just a mental program repeating itself. Stop feeding the story of suffering. Every time you repeat in your mind what was done to you, every time you tell the same story of pain, you are reinforcing the wound. Ask yourself, does this story empower me or does it weaken me? If it weakens you, let it go. Do the opposite of what the ego wants. The ego wants you to react, to take offense, to stay trapped in the same emotion. But when you decide to respond calmly, with detachment, with acceptance, you break its power over you. The moment the ego loses control over you, something incredible happens. You stop feeling the need to cling to pain. You stop depending on external validation. You stop feeling like a victim of circumstances. And at that moment, you realize something brutally powerful. The suffering was never in what happened, but in how you interpreted it. The pain was real, but the story the ego created around it is what kept you trapped. Now, in the next point, we will explore one of the most impactful truths about emotional healing. Pain doesn't disappear by fighting against it, but by embracing it in a completely different way. And when you understand this, you will see that healing is not something that is achieved in the future, but something you can start experiencing right now. Stop resisting pain. What you resist persists. If there's something we were taught wrong since we were little, it's that emotional pain is something to avoid, repress, or deny. We were told phrases like, "Don't cry, be strong. Don't give it importance." And without realizing it, we learn to fight against our own suffering instead of understanding it. But here's the reality. No one tells you. What you resist persists. When you try to run away from pain, it only grows stronger. The more you repress it, the more it controls you from the shadows. And the more you refuse to feel it, the deeper it roots itself in your mind and body. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. One does not enlighten by imagining figures of light, but by making conscious the darkness. This means that you cannot heal by ignoring your suffering, but by facing it head-on. The destructive cycle of resisting pain. Think about this. If someone pushes you, what is your instinctive reaction? Push back. The same thing happens with emotional pain. Every time you feel sadness, anger, or distress, and try to get rid of those emotions quickly, you only give them more power. You repress what you feel. You don't want to cry. You don't want to feel vulnerable. So you tell yourself that everything is fine, when in reality, it's not. But the pain remains, accumulating deep inside you. You distract yourself compulsively. You take refuge in work, in your phone, in social media, in anything that helps you avoid the emptiness you feel. But when you are alone with yourself, everything comes back even stronger. You look for someone to blame. The ego convinces you that the problem is external. The person who hurt you, the life that wasn't fair to you. And as long as you keep focusing on blaming others, you'll never look within yourself to heal. This is the vicious cycle that keeps so many people trapped. It's not the pain itself that destroys us. It's the resistance to the pain that makes it unbearable. The power of accepting pain instead of rejecting it. Here's the key to breaking the cycle. Stop resisting pain and start experiencing it consciously. It sounds contradictory, but it's the only real way to heal. Instead of trying to run away, allow yourself to feel. Instead of repressing, observe it without judging it. If you feel sadness, feel it completely. If you feel anger, Don't deny it. Observe it. It doesn't mean you should act impulsively, but you must allow yourself to experience the emotion without resistance. And here's the most surprising part. When you do this, when you truly enter into the feeling without trying to change it or repress it, the pain begins to lose its control over you. The principle of impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. One of the most powerful truths you can learn is that everything passes. No emotion is eternal. No suffering lasts forever. But when you resist pain, you unnecessarily prolong it. Carl Jung spoke about the importance of inner transformation, and impermanence is a fundamental part of it. Pain, like pleasure, is temporary. It is not something that defines you, nor something that will last forever. Think about the last time you went through a difficult moment. In that instant, you felt like you would never get out of it. But here you are, with new experiences, new perspectives, and the same will happen with any pain you're feeling now. It will pass too. How to practice radical acceptance of pain. If you really want to stop being a slave to your suffering, here are 3 steps you can start applying right now. Stop judging your pain. Instead of asking yourself, "Why do I feel this way?" or "When will this pass?" Logically, simply allow yourself to feel without labels. It's neither good nor bad. It's just an experience you are living. Observe it in your body. When you feel anxiety, anger, or sadness, don't get stuck in the mental story. Instead of thinking, "This is unfair," bring your attention to your body. Where do I feel this emotion? How does it manifest physically? Just observe it without fighting against it. Breathe through the emotion. Instead of clenching your teeth and holding on, breathe deeply and allow the emotion to flow through you. You don't need to do anything else. Just be present with what you feel. When you learn to accept pain instead of resisting it, something incredible happens. You realize it has no power over you. It doesn't mean the pain will disappear immediately, but its hold over you will break. And at that moment, instead of being a victim of your suffering, you become someone who can go through it with maturity and strength. Your true power lies in accepting what is, not in fighting against it. Most people spend their whole lives running away from pain, without realizing that the only way to free themselves is by facing it. And when you do, when you stop resisting and simply experience it with full awareness, you discover something amazing. Pain is not the enemy. Suffering is not here to destroy you, but to transform you. And once you understand this, you stop fearing it. Now, in the next point, we will talk about how to turn your pain into power. Because once you stop fighting against it, you can use it as a tool to grow and evolve in ways you never imagined. And when you do, you'll see that healing is not only possible, but inevitable. 5. Transform your pain into power. The alchemical process of healing. By now, you know that resisting pain only strengthens it, avoiding it only makes it deeper, and accepting it is the first step to freeing yourself. But there's something even more powerful you can do with your suffering. Turn it into your greatest source of strength. Carl Jung explained this better than anyone when he spoke of internal alchemy. In ancient times, alchemists sought to transform lead into gold. But Jung discovered that the true alchemy was not physical, but psychological and spiritual. Lead represents our pain, our fears, our deepest wounds. Gold is the wisdom, maturity, and strength we gain when we use that pain to grow. So the question is not how to avoid suffering, but how to use it to become a stronger, wiser, and freer version of yourself. The hidden power of pain. A call to awakening. Think about this. The strongest people you know, those who have developed deep wisdom about life, didn't get there because they had an easy existence. They achieved it because they went through the fire of suffering and came out transformed. Every experience of pain is an opportunity to awaken, to stop being who you were and become someone more conscious, more resilient, more connected to reality. Jung spoke of the dark night of the soul, a period in which a person faces their greatest suffering, but also their greatest opportunity for transformation. It is the moment when everything seems to collapse, when you believe you can't take it anymore, when the pain seems unbearable. But if, instead of resisting, you ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this pain to grow? Then you stop being a victim and become the alchemist of your own life, from destruction to rebirth. How pain forged a new version of you. Each time you go through a loss, a betrayal, or a deep disappointment, something inside you dies. But what most people don't understand is that this death is necessary. It is the death of illusions, of false expectations, of the identity that no longer serves you. And after every death, there is a rebirth, a chance to rebuild yourself in a stronger, more authentic way. If you look back on your life, you'll see that the moments that impacted you the most weren't the happiest ones, but those where you had to face adversity and move forward. That's the process of transformation. Pain destroys you. It breaks the beliefs you had about yourself and the world. It forces you to look at yourself in the mirror, to face everything you had ignored, the parts of you that you preferred not to see. It gives you the opportunity to choose whether to stay trapped or evolve, and the decision is yours. How to use pain to strengthen yourself instead of weaken you. Here's a practical method to transform any pain into power. Change your mindset. Pain is not a punishment, it is an initiation. People who see suffering as an injustice get stuck in bitterness, but those who see it as a process of transformation come out stronger than ever. Every difficult experience you go through is a test that life gives you to teach you something. So instead of asking, why me? Logically, ask yourself, what is this experience trying to teach me? Turn your story into your power. Look at people who have gone through extreme pain and used it as a source of impact. Those who were rejected and learned to validate themselves. Those who were betrayed and learned to trust their intuition. Those who hit rock bottom and discovered a strength within them they never imagined. Your story is yours, but what you do with it is completely up to you. Use pain as fuel for your goals. Pain can destroy you, or it can propel you forward. You decide which direction to use it in. If someone hurt you, instead of staying stuck in resentment, use it as motivation to grow. If you feel that life has treated you unfairly, show that you can overcome any obstacle. If a loss left you empty, fill yourself with a greater purpose. The most successful people in the world didn't get there because they never suffered. They became strong because they used their suffering as a driving force to go beyond. The final test, turning pain into wisdom. When you have gone through suffering and learned from it, something incredible happens. You become immune to many of the things that once affected you. You stop reacting to others' negativity because you understand that what they project is not yours. You stop fearing pain because you know you can go through it and come out stronger. You become a person with an imposing presence because you've passed through darkness and found your own light. This is what Jung called individuation, the process in which you become who you truly are, without masks, without fears, without depending on anything external to validate your existence. When you reach this point, the cycle of emotional pain is broken. You no longer define yourself by your suffering. You no longer need to avoid it or fear it. You simply use it as a teacher to continue evolving. And then, you realize something incredible. Pain didn't make you weaker. It made you invincible. The choice is yours. The decision is in your hands now. You know that pain is not something you should avoid. It's the spark that can ignite your greatest transformation. You have two options. Stay trapped in suffering, resisting, feeling like a victim of circumstances, or use it as a springboard to become someone stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. Only one of these options will give you freedom. Which one will you choose? Let me know in the comments. I transform my pain into power. If you decide to break the cycle and use every difficult experience as a stepping stone for your growth. Because once you make that decision, nothing and no one will be able to stop you. Conclusion: choose to break the cycle and turn your pain into power. At this point, you have two paths ahead of you. You can continue allowing pain to control your life, letting it poison your thoughts, drain your spirit, and limit your growth. Or you can do what very few are willing to do. Use that pain as a catalyst for your transformation. Carl Jung made it clear. You cannot awaken without first having hit rock bottom. And now that you understand the truth behind suffering, you have the power to decide what you will do with it. The cycle of pain only breaks when you take control. When instead of letting suffering define you, you turn it into the fuel that drives you to evolve. When you understand that everything you've been through wasn't a punishment, but an initiation, pain only has power over you if you continue resisting it. Let me know in the comments. I transform my pain into power. If you choose to be the person who takes control of their destiny instead of being controlled by their suffering. Because once you make that decision, nothing and no one will be able to stop you. If you've made it this far, it's because you're ready to change your life. But this is just the beginning. Watch the next video that will leave you speechless and help you dive even deeper into this path of transformation. Click now, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the content that can truly change the way you see life. See you in the next video.